Hey everyone, welcome back to the Peak Performance Table Tennis Podcast. In today's episode, we'll dive into part 2 of a 5-part series about nutrition and how to optimize it for table tennis. To frame this discussion, we'll be using the Muscle and Strength Nutrition Pyramid developed by Dr. Eric Helms. In this model, the categories at the bottom have the most significant impact on results, while the items at the top are of decreasing importance. Last episode, we talked about energy balance, and today we move into the second level, macronutrients and fiber. We'll discuss the protein gap and get into the specifics of precisely how much protein athletes actually need. We'll talk about the role of dietary fats, including some common misconceptions about saturated fats. We'll talk about carbohydrates, with specifics on how to calculate daily needs and the importance of nutrient-dense carbs versus high-energy, easily digestible carbs, optimal fiber intake, and more. Enjoy.
Today we're diving into something you might not expect: nutrition.
Yeah, it's surprising how many players overlook how much their diet affects their game.
Right, like are you really playing your best if you're running on sugary snacks and energy drinks? We're going to find out today as we dig into Kevin Finn's Peak Performance Table Tennis. And I got to say, some of the stuff in there really surprised me. Like, Finn actually found that eating super clean.
Eating clean.
Yeah, like the super strict, whole foods only kind of clean, it was actually hurting his game.
Interesting, how so?
Well, he was so focused on eating, only fruits and veggies and lean meats like that whole caveman thing.
Right.
That he wasn't eating enough. He was basically running on fumes by the time he got to the table.
Wow, so his performance really took a nosedive.
Totally tanked. And it all came down to calories, which kind of surprised me,
Yeah.
Because we hear so much about like good foods, bad foods, but Finn really breaks it down in this book and shows how you got to have that calorie foundation in place before you can even think about anything else.
It's true. You can't outrun a bad diet, as they say, even if you're really good at table tennis.
Okay, so we've got our calorie foundation. What's the next level up on this pyramid?
So once you've got that solid base, you got to think about how you're using those calories. And that's where macros come in.
Macros.
Macronutrients, your protein, your fats, your carbs, they all play different roles in how your body performs.
Oh, I see. So it's like if your calories are your budget for the month, your macros are how you're actually spending that money, right?
Exactly. You got to cover those essential expenses first. Then you can start thinking about the fun stuff.
So pizza isn't an essential expense.
Maybe not, unless you're talking about fueling up for a big tournament.
Fair enough. I'm all for strategic pizza consumption. But seriously, those fun calories, those are what Finn calls our discretionary calories, right?
That's right. You got to fuel your body with the good stuff first, then you can sprinkle in some treats here and there.
Okay, I'm loving this pyramid analogy. It's making so much sense. So let's break down these macronutrients, starting with protein. That's the muscle building one, right?
Protein is essential, especially for us table tennis players. All those explosive movements and intense rallies, your muscles take a beating.
So we need protein to build and repair those muscles, right?
Exactly. But there's a lot of confusion about how much protein is enough or even too much. I mean, you've probably heard that too much protein can be bad for your kidneys, right?
Yeah, I've definitely heard that. Is that true?
Well, Finn actually addresses that in the book, and he says it's largely a myth. For most people, especially athletes, it's really hard to eat too much protein.
Interesting. So more protein is generally better for table tennis players?
To a point, yes. Finn talks about this protein gap.
A protein gap.
Basically, the difference between the amount of protein the average person eats and what athletes actually need to perform their best. And that gap can be pretty significant.
So how much protein are we actually talking about here? Should it be like chugging protein shakes all day?
It's not quite that extreme. Finn actually gives us some pretty specific numbers to work with.
Oh, good. Give me the deets.
So he recommends table tennis players aim for 0.7 to 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight each day.
Okay, so it's different for everyone depending on how much you weigh.
Exactly. And remember, it's not just about bulking up. It's about helping those muscles recover after all those intense rallies.
Right, because table tennis is all about those fast twitch muscles, right?
Exactly. You need those muscles to be in tip-top shape to react quickly and generate power in your shots.
Makes sense. So it's not just about how much protein you're getting, but also when you're getting it. Should I be downing a protein shake immediately after every practice?
Well, it's more about spreading it out throughout the day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like aiming to have some protein with every meal and maybe even in your snacks.
Gotcha. So it's like I should be building a protein foundation all day long.
That's a great way to put it. Think about incorporating things like eggs, Greek yogurt, lentils, chicken, fish. There are tons of options.
Love all those. But what about all the plant-based eaters out there? Can you still hit those protein targets without, like, living on tofu?
Absolutely. Finn addresses that too. He says vegans and vegetarians can definitely meet their protein needs. They might just need to be a little more mindful about it.
Okay.
They might need to aim for the higher end of that range we talked about, maybe closer to 1 gram per pound of body weight, and just pay a little more attention to their protein sources.
So it's definitely doable. It just takes a little extra planning.
Exactly. And there are so many great plant-based protein sources out there now, like lentils, beans, quinoa, tofu, tempeh, the list goes on.
That's good to know. Puts my mind at ease, at least. So more protein, check. Now, what about fat? That seems to be the macronutrient everyone loves to demonize.
Yeah, fat definitely gets a bad rap. But here's the thing. Dietary fat, essential. Hormone production, nutrient absorption, keeping your cells functioning properly. You can't just cut it out completely.
Okay, so how much fat should we be aiming for?
Finn recommends aiming for about 20% to 30% of your total daily calories from fat. Just as important, though, he sets a minimum daily intake at 0.3 grams of fat per pound of body weight. Going below that, it can actually work against you, even if you're trying to be super healthy.
If figuring out all these macronutrient ratios seems a little overwhelming, I recommend giving MacroFactor a try. MacroFactor is the best nutrition tracking app on the market, and it's the app I personally use and recommend to all my clients. MacroFactor will set you up with a perfectly balanced macronutrient and calorie goal that matches your specific needs and body type. The app also has an industry-leading algorithm that will adjust your targets automatically each week to match your metabolism and to keep you on track and making progress. You can get a 2-week free trial with my code KevinF and start tracking your progress with confidence. Head over to macrofactorapp.com to download the app, use my code KevinF, and take your nutrition to the next level.
Wait, seriously? There's a minimum amount of fat I need, even as an athlete. Why is that?
Think of it this way. Yeah, fat doesn't fuel your muscles during a match the way carbs do, right? But it's still a crucial building block for your body. It plays a role in everything from like regulating your hormones to helping your body absorb vitamins.
So it's not just about avoiding fat altogether. It's about getting enough of the right kinds. What kind should we be focusing on?
Finn actually breaks it down into 3 categories. Fats to include, fats to consume in moderation, and those to avoid. Pretty straightforward.
Okay, let's hear it. What's on the include list?
So think healthy fats, right? The ones you'll find in things like fatty fish, olive oil, nuts and seeds, avocados, the stuff we generally think of as good for us. He also says it's okay to include full-fat dairy, eggs, and even some of the fattier cuts of red meat in moderation, of course.
Hold on, really? Even with all the talk about saturated fat being so bad for you, I mean, doesn't saturated fat clog your arteries?
That's what a lot of people think, yeah.
Yeah.
And while it's true that there's a link between saturated fat and some of those heart disease risk factors, research hasn't actually proven that saturated fat directly causes heart disease. It's a lot more nuanced than that.
So it's not as simple as eat this, avoid that.
Exactly. Finn really emphasizes looking at our overall diet, our dietary patterns, rather than just like singling out one nutrient and making it the villain. He even points out that the cholesterol in foods like eggs and full-fat dairy, it doesn't actually have a huge impact on our blood cholesterol levels. It's way more about just the overall balance in our diet.
Okay, this is blowing my mind a little. I've been choosing low-fat everything, thinking I was doing the right thing. So if those are the include fats, what about the moderation ones?
Think butter, coconut oil, grapeseed oil. Not necessarily bad for you, but they don't offer the same nutritional benefits as those in the include list. And then, of course, trans fats, those are definitely on the avoid list. And for good reason. Those have gotten a bad rap, and it's well-deserved.
Right. Makes sense. So protein, fat. That leaves us with the macronutrient that always seems to cause the most confusion. Carbohydrates.
It's no wonder people are confused. I mean, there's so much conflicting information out there about carbs. Low carb, high carb, simple, complex. It's enough to make your head spin.
Exactly. So let's clear the air. What's Finn's take on carbs, especially for table tennis players?
He's very clear about this. Carbohydrates. They're our primary fuel source, especially for a fast-paced sport like table tennis. You start skimping on carbs, your performance on the court is going to suffer.
Interesting. But how do we actually figure out how many carbs we should be eating? Any practical tips?
Finn's approach is pretty straightforward, actually. Once you've figured out your protein and fat needs, the rest of your daily calories, that's your carb allowance. Let's say your daily calorie needs are around 3,000, which makes sense for an active guy like yourself. You'd need about 130 to 215 grams of protein, right? And around 83 grams of fat. So that's roughly 576 calories from protein, 747 from fat. Subtract that from your 3,000 total, you've got about 1,677 calories left for carbs. That comes out to around 419 grams of carbs per day.
419 grams of carbs. That sounds like a lot.
It might sound like a lot, but remember, carbs are your body's main energy source, especially during those tough table tennis matches. And when you break it down into meals and snacks throughout the day, it's really not that much.
But are all carbs created equal? Should we be focusing on certain types more than others?
Great question. And this is where Finn's athlete's carb pyramid comes in really handy. So at the base of the pyramid, we've got our nutrient-dense carbs like fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Finn recommends at least 5 servings of fruits and veggies every day and about 3 servings of whole grains.
Okay, that's pretty standard advice, even for people who aren't athletes. What about the next level up?
As we move up, we get to the easily digestible high-energy carbs. Things like white rice, pasta, low-fiber breads, and cereals.
Ah, the foods we're often told to avoid, right?
Right. But they actually play a really important role in giving us that quick energy, especially around training or competition time. They're not the enemy, especially if you're already making sure to eat plenty of those nutrient-dense options.
So there's a time and a place for those simple carbs. It's all about context.
Exactly. And then, of course, right at the tippy top of the pyramid, we've got our occasional treats. You know, the sugary drinks, the less nutritious snacks.
I'll be honest, it's still kind of hard to wrap my head around those foods having any place in a healthy diet, even for athletes.
It all comes back to balance and moderation. Finn's point is that when we start demonizing entire food groups, it can actually do more harm than good.
Right. But what about fiber? Where does that fit into this whole carb conversation?
Great question. Fiber is crucial. Finn recommends aiming for about 14 grams of fiber for every 1,000 calories you consume.
Okay, so plenty of fruits, veggies, whole grains.
Exactly. That fiber helps keep you feeling full and satisfied, regulates your digestion, and just helps your body run smoothly.
Which is what we want. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about the importance of that calorie foundation, the power of protein, the nuances of fats, and how to navigate the often confusing world of carbs. It's been a lot, but I feel like I finally have a clear game plan for what to eat to up my table tennis game.
Me too. And I think that's the key takeaway here, right? It's not about following some restrictive diet. It's about understanding how these macronutrients work and finding what works best for you.
Speaking of which, we'll leave everyone with this final thought. Finn's discussion on macronutrients. It's really just one piece of the puzzle, you know. Helms' nutritional pyramid, it goes way deeper than that. We've got micronutrients, hydration, timing our meals, supplementation, a whole world to explore. But that is a deep dive for another day. Until then, happy training, everyone. And, well, bon appetit.
Hello there, it's me again. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'd love to have some feedback. So if you're listening on YouTube, please like and subscribe and drop a comment. And if you're on another platform, subscribe now for future episodes packed with actionable insights. In each episode, we'll be breaking down the key concepts from my book, making it easier for you to improve your game step by step. So don't miss out, subscribe today, and as always, may the spin be with you.